actually interesting in this particular article is a document that's buried in a series of filings from Letitia James from August 17th of 2023 that has a declaration of Letitia James and the person that she bought the property with, who was acting as her power of attorney at the time, that both people were going to be or intended to make North Fork, Virginia, their primary residence at the time that they were making this agreement.
See, her Virginia property she claimed was her primary residence while holding it down in New York as Attorney General. Now, why does that matter? Because calling a place your primary residence qualifies you for a better mortgage rate and tax breaks. Now, if she misrepresented her living situations, she could have pulled better financing. That's bank fraud. And this ain't just no speculation. This is straight up what the FBI is looking at. If those mortgage forms don't match reality, that's false statement, unofficial filings. And people have been locked up for way less than that. But when it comes down to a political figure, which she is, the legal system just, for some reason, just seems to move slow. And we just tend to let it go and just let it fade into a past thought. Why? Make me understand that. Leave a comment. I'm interested in hearing what y'all thinking. And it gets even messier with this Brooklyn property, too. I mean, the unit count on her mortgage paperwork doesn't match what's on the ground. Let's put it that way. Why does this matter? Because banks base loans and terms on property details, meaning if you mistake how many units you have, you can qualify for a lower interest rate for better loans. So if those numbers were fudged, she basically tricked the lender into giving her a better deal. And that, my friend, is fraud. Plain and simple. See, these banks don't play when it's regular folk, like you and I. If we're up against the bank, oh no, they ain't gonna play with us. But when somebody's important, high profile, let's say like Letitia James, that's when the rules start bending. Well, the bottom line, this investigation is not some throwaway headline. Listen, the FBI and the DOJ are deep in this mess, looking at decades of shady filings, but the real question isn't whether Letitia James did it. It's whether she actually will face the consequences, or is this just going to fade into the background till the next political scandal drops. Listen, you know, we often think that if there's no jail time, there's no real punishment. But what if someone could face total financial ruin? We're talking over $1 million in penalties without ever being convicted of a crime. In this explainer, we're not getting into the politics of it all. Instead, we're going to break down the really powerful and often unseen world of civil penalties, where the financial hit can be just as severe as any criminal sentence. So how on earth is that possible? Well, the answer is buried in a specific corner of civil law, one that allows for these absolutely devastating financial penalties to be stacked up, one on top of the other, long before a criminal trial even gets started. So here's our roadmap. First, we'll tackle the main idea, penalties without prison. Then, we'll dive into the 4 specific enhancements that make the fines balloon. After that, we'll do the math and see how it all adds up. And finally, we'll look at what the source calls a potential political escape route from the whole thing. Alright, first up, penalties without prison. This is where you have to forget everything you've seen in crime dramas. The goal here isn't locking someone up. It's all about financial accountability. And the tools they use to get it can be incredibly powerful. And the key phrase you need to know is civil enhancements. Honestly, the best way to think of it is like a legal multiplier. In fraud cases, these are basically rules that let the court jack up the financial penalties based on the nitty-gritty details of the alleged crime, like how much money we're talking about, who did it, and how they pulled it off. And this is all happening completely separate from any criminal charges. So, let's see how this thing gets built, piece by piece. We're going to look at the 4 major civil enhancements that can be used in a case like this. And here's the really crucial part. They don't just pick one. They can be stacked right on top of each other. Okay, so what are they? The big 4 are the sheer amount of money involved, what's called an abuse of public trust, any long-term patterns of fraud, and whether there was any sophisticated deception used to cover it up. Each one adds another layer to the fine. Let's break them down. First on the list is the loss amount enhancement. This one's pretty straightforward. The more money that was allegedly involved in the fraud, the bigger the potential penalty. Simple as that. Now, according to the source material, the alleged fraud involves somewhere between $155,000 and $240,000. Under the federal guidelines they use to calculate these things, that amount of money triggers a pretty significant multiplier. But what does that actually mean in cold, hard cash? It means a potential fine of anywhere from $200,000 up to $600,000. And get this, that penalty can be way higher than the amount of the alleged fraud itself. And just remember, this is only the first enhancement we're talking about. Next up, the system looks at who is being accused. This brings us to enhancement number 2, abuse of public trust. This is a special penalty multiplier that kicks in when the person accused is a public official. And when it comes to the guidelines, they're pretty black and white on this. If you commit fraud while you're in a position of public trust, like say an attorney general, you automatically get another multiplier added on. The idea is that it's not just a financial crime at that point, it's a betrayal of the public's trust. And that translates directly into more money, an additional $50,000 to $100,000, just tacked right on top of whatever other fines are already there. But it's not just about the money or the position, it's also about time. And that's our third enhancement for long-term fraud patterns. This one penalizes deception that wasn't just a one-time thing, but something that allegedly went on for years and years. The source material points to a pattern that wasn't some short-term scheme. It reportedly stretched from 2001 all the way to 2021. I mean, that's a 2-decade pattern, and you better believe the legal system has a specific enhancement for that kind of long-running activity. And you guessed it, a long-term pattern triggers another penalty multiplier. The system isn't just penalizing the individual acts, it's scaling the punishment based on how long the deception went on. This adds another $60,000 to $120,000 to that running total. So the really crucial point here is that the penalty isn't just for the transactions, but for the years of alleged financial damage they caused. And that brings us to our fourth and final enhancement, sophisticated financial deception. This one isn't about the what, it's about the how. It's all about whether deliberate actions were taken to try and cover up the crime. According to the source, the allegations include things like altering records, misclassifying documents, and moving money around through shady channels, basically trying to cover your tracks. This is considered structured deception, and it earns yet another penalty multiplier because it shows a higher level of intent. So this final enhancement adds between $80,000 and $160,000 to the potential penalties. This is one of those areas where these civil penalties can sometimes be even harsher than what a judge might recommend in a criminal case. Okay, so we've broken down all 4 of those enhancements. Now for the fun part. Let's move to our next section and actually add it all up. So here's the final calculation, based on the numbers in the source material. When you stack all 4 of those enhancements on top of each other, you get a total estimated civil penalty somewhere between $545,000 and over $1.2 million. And that's before they even factor in legal fees, asset recoveries, or any other charges. These fines alone are designed to be financially crippling. So, with these kinds of massive penalties potentially on the table, what happens next? Well, that brings us to our final section, the political escape route, which is all about the real-world maneuvering that can come into play. Here's the thing, unlike a criminal conviction, which can take forever, civil penalties can hit fast. But the source points out that political realities can get in the way. Allies might be able to delay investigations, which creates a window to negotiate some kind of quiet settlement. In that scenario, huge fines get paid, but criminal charges are ultimately avoided. It's a legal maneuver that can sidestep full public accountability. And all of this leaves us with one final big question. In cases like this, where the power of civil law is just so immense, will these devastating financial penalties end up being the final word no matter what happens in a criminal court? It's a crucial reminder that sometimes the biggest battles aren't fought in a courtroom, but on a balance sheet.
Everybody knows those allegations are baseless.